First of all, let me welcome you all to this event. This comes as a result of the presentation that Elaine Franklin did in one of our meetings. We gave Elaine 30 minutes in the meeting to make a case, and she made such a fantastic case that people were extremely excited and about following it up, because she kept talking all the time about the fact that she is part of a team, and so well, if she's that good, how good could that team be? You know, so we prodded Victoria to get the meeting going, the presentation going. The Labor Community Alliance has an existence of 6 years. We started as a group that supported Bernie Sanders. We were at that time South Florida for Bernie, and we evolved. You know, Bernie didn't make the presidency, didn't get the nomination or get elected. So we ended up in what we are now, the Labor Community Alliance. We have been like 3 or 4 years now in under that name. We have a broad number of people that are, you know, I will say, and I don't have the figures right in front of my hand, neither do I am paying that much attention to those figures. We have around 70% of our people being labor and 30% being community. We would like to up more the community to be able to create a situation where our motto, which is labor issues are community issues and community issues are labor issues, become a reality. And we believe that we, as labor, and understanding the role of labor in society, that labor is the backbone of the middle class. Let me underline that again: the backbone of the middle class, and that the middle class is the backbone of democracy. And so all interrelated, all the link, and we believe that we need to take a role. We don't pretend to be a leadership organization or nothing of that sort. We do pretend to be a participant in the discussions in our society, and we plan to continue doing so. And all of you that are here, that if you are interested, please let Gabe know, and Victoria, so we can then add you to our list. We have a humongous list of people that are participants, and people follow up what our issues are. And without much further ado, I would like to give a major thanks to Gabe Ignetti for putting this together. He's the head of the Environmental Caucus Committee in I just finished a caucus meeting, Environmental Committee in LCA, and also to Victoria Olson, who is the Gabe's faithful partner in the committee, and she was who brought Elaine Franklin to our attention, and we are eternally thankful for that. Thank you very much, and I hope that you consider uniting with us, because well, you get the drift of who we are. And thank you again for coming tonight, and looking forward to having a great meeting, which I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo. Welcome everyone to an LCA environmental presentation, A Future Forged by Climate Change. I'm going to be tonight's moderator for our event, where we're going to be having a discussion on solutions. Tonight, the participants are going to propose climate solutions ranging from energy efficiency to fossil fuel taxes. And the facilitator will then test these approaches separately or as a package using the En-ROADS Climate Solutions Simulator. So everyone here is going to get to see the impact of global temperature and other factors. They're going to explain more about what the En-ROADS Climate Simulator is. Tonight we have three fantastic speakers. I thank them so much for being here. We have Bernal Sybil, Jeff Dorian, and Elaine Franklin. Elaine Franklin is a CLEO Climate Speaker and a facilitator of the En-ROADS Climate Simulator. Ms. Franklin is also the City of Hollywood's Environmental Sustainability Coordinator. She facilitates city staff, residents, and others to take proactive action together on making Hollywood resilient and prosperous. Bernal Sybil is a U.S. Navy veteran, lead accredited professional civil engineer. He is a longtime resident of the City of Hollywood and is a passionate gardener. He believes in the power of our collective humanity in creating a more just and sustainable world. And Jeff Dorian is a retired social worker who leads the Broward chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. He is a lifelong South Florida resident who has committed the bulk of his time to Citizens Climate Lobby for the past 3 years. He is also CCL's liaison to Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And real quick about me, my name is Brian Hernandez. I'm the former president of the Kendall Democrats Club, and I used to work at the EPA in Washington, D.C. during the Obama administration. So real quick, this is going to be a very interactive presentation. The only rule I ask is if you want to speak or ask a question, please raise your virtual hand and I will pick on you. The floor is the speaker's floor. So if you want to speak, just raise your virtual hand and I most likely will pick on you. So you'll get your chance to be heard for sure. Especially since we have a very small group today. So don't worry, everyone's going to be heard. I just want to let you guys know also, LCA is sponsoring the Eco-Modernist Society of North America's Synth Fuel from CO2 Forum, featuring leading experts in this area, happening this Sunday at 2 p.m. And the information for that is going to be on the chat. All right, and without further ado, our speakers have the floor.
Thank you, Brian, and thank the Labor Community Association Alliance for inviting us tonight. Just a little housekeeping. So I am the moderator on my side. I will introduce the background of the En-ROADS project, the genesis of it, the idea and science behind it. And then I'll pass it on to Elaine. We'll go behind the science and the biology behind our ecological challenges in the world right now. And at that point, Jeff will discuss some of the levers in the simulator. And after that, we'll invite commentary and ideas about how do we respond to a simulated climate solution. With that, I'd like to discuss just a little bit the En-ROADS simulator. Climate simulator is a powerful simulation tool for exploring how to address global energy and climate challenges through large-scale policy, technological, and societal shift. En-ROADS, you could create scenarios that focus on how to changes in taxes, subsidies, economic growth, energy efficiencies, technological innovation, carbon pricing, fuel mix, and other factors will change the global climate emissions and temperature. Software was developed by Climate Interactive, the University of Massachusetts Lowell Climate Change Initiative, and MIT Sloan. The acronym En-ROADS, E-N-R-O-A-D-S, stands for Energy Rapid Overview and Decision Support. It's an extension of an award-winning simulator program called C-Roads, which has thousands of equations running simultaneously with data that is being fed real time in its database. The simulator is designed to be interactive with groups like yourself, and it can be used for the basis for scientifically rigorous conversation around addressing climate change. This makes it ideal for decision makers and people like you, civil society and other groups, or anyone who is curious about the choices in the world. Currently, the challenges of climate and dealing with it are overwhelming, it appears. But we believe this tool, when presented in this format, will offer us some solution, and if I may say, hope about the future. And with that being said, I'll turn this over to Elaine. We'll go over the science of climate change and the history of how we got to this point. Elaine?
Thanks, Vern. So the first thing I'm going to do is share my screen so I can show. Oh, I need the host to allow me to share my screen.
Sure. Give me one
Thank
second.
you. Okay.
All right. I'm kind of, I don't know how to do that. You mind walking me through that? Do you know how to do that?
It might be if you go to participants. I don't know if you can select me to share or if you just have to open it up for all participants. I'm not sure.
Brian, it's the green thing in the bottom in the middle with the arrow, the green box with the arrow.
That's for him to share his screen.
Yeah.
He would
that's
share
his-
his screen if he does that. He needs to give me
All
the
right.
ability to share.
I'm next to your
Participants.
name, Elaine,
Mhm.
on participants,
Mhm.
and I see make host, rename.
Okay. I think if you make me host, then I'll be able to share.
Okay.
Yeah, do it, man. Yeah, that's what you got to do.
All right, your host.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, here we go. Let's see, I've moved down. So I'm going to go through these first few slides pretty quickly because Vern gave us a bit of an introduction on this. So this is the En-ROADS Climate Workshop. And these are the institution that he was referring to, Climate Interactive, that created this simulator. So we're going to do a brief introduction, then we'll go through the scenarios of success and then a debrief. So as we go through this exercise, I want you to think about what seems possible post-COVID-19, whenever that is, that didn't seem possible before. So now we'll do a very brief review of the science because I know you all are a savvy group here. And some of you have seen some of these slides before when you joined me in May. Thank you for joining again. So here we see a graph showing the concentration of carbon dioxide that has been measured in our atmosphere over the past 800,000 years. And what you see is that it has cycled between a maximum of 300 parts per million to a low of under 180 parts per million for the past 800,000 years. And when we talk about parts per million, imagine you have a box with 1 million molecules of air. So out of that 1 million molecules of air, we're talking about between 180 and 300 of those molecules being carbon dioxide. But what we've done in the industrial era is pumped all of this additional carbon dioxide into the air so that we are now well over 400 parts per million, a level of CO2 that humans have not been exposed to before. And right alongside that increase in carbon dioxide in the air, we've had a massive increase in the temperature. So what this is showing you here is a snippet from the simulator, which we'll get to in a few minutes. And you can see that the current projection is that with business as usual, which is represented by the black line in the center here, we would reach a change in temperature of 3.6 degrees Celsius by 2100. And you see this is not leveling off. So this is just the temperature we're expected to be at in 2100, and it would continue to increase. The blue line overlaying that black line that represents business as usual is the line that you are going to be taking action on. So the goal is going to be to try to get this blue line down below this dotted line at 2 degrees, and ideally below the dotted line at 1.5 degrees. So the dotted line at 2 degrees represents the Paris Climate Agreement. And now we're coming to recognize that we really need to be more aggressive and try to keep the temperature to 1.5 degrees. So what does 3.6 degrees of warming mean? Well, we're seeing some of these changes already here in South Florida. So it means sea level rise, where the oceans are expanding and the land ice is melting. So as water warms, it expands, it takes up more space. So with more carbon emissions in the air, we're not only warming the air around us, but also the ocean, so it's expanding. And then that's also melting land ice, so we're adding water to the ocean. We're raising the sea level through both of those actions. And here you see a diagram of an average height man of about 5'10", so you can get an idea of how much sea level rise it would be compared to the height of this person. So the lowest projection is 8 inches, intermediate low for the North National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, is 1 foot 7 inches. The intermediate high is 3 feet 11 inches. And the highest could be over 6 feet. And here in Florida and around the world, almost half of the rise that we've already experienced in sea level has happened since 1993. And currently a rise of more than 8 feet could not be ruled out by 2100. And just like we saw with the curve for temperature, the curve for sea level rise also does not flatten out. It continues to increase past the year 2100. So to give you an example of what that would look like, here we can see what Miami-Dade County looks like today. And with 8 feet of sea level rise, all areas would be flooded except for those highest points, which would essentially make Miami-Dade County the new Keys of South Florida. This is showing us a snippet of Fort Lauderdale with 4 feet of sea level rise, or 1.2 meters. And what's important to notice here is that there are areas along the barrier island right along the coast that are actually higher elevation than some areas inland where there are water bodies connected to the ocean. So because of these rivers and canals that connect to the intracoastal and to the ocean, flooding can go quite far inland. And sea level rise is not the only consequence of climate change, but also the massive wildfires that have been ravaging the Western US year after year, and even other parts of the world. It can be hard to remember now with all of the things that we've dealt with in the past year and a half, but if you think back to the winter of 2019-2020, the summertime in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia was dealing with massive wildfires as well. So these wildfires are touching lots of places around the world and causing huge amounts of monetary damage, loss of life, loss of property, damaging ecosystems, and killing a lot of wildlife. But the day-to-day impacts of climate change are something that we absolutely need to focus on as well. So not just these natural disasters that happen periodically, but the extreme heat that we're dealing with in cities. This is referred to as the urban heat island, where you have a huge concentration of concrete and asphalt and much less vegetation and trees than usual. So you have this spike in temperature, and the temperature just doesn't cool down here, even overnight. I was noticing the temperature forecast a few days ago here in South Florida, 4 a.m., the real field temperature was 90 degrees. So it's not cooling down day or night. And these are creating major health impacts for children and adults alike. And there are lots of different jobs that people have to do outside. Here we see an image of construction workers, but there are also delivery workers, inspectors, police, and fire. There are many people who have to work outdoors, and they're subjected to these extreme heat events. With the increase in heat, it's also going to spread infectious diseases that we usually associate with the tropic zone. So as mosquitoes that carry these infectious diseases are able to move farther north with the warming temperatures, they're going to carry those diseases with them. It's also going to impact our harvest, the level of food production that we can expect. So many of our staple grains like maize, rice, and wheat will all be heavily impacted, and other crops that rely on pollinators will also be affected. We're already seeing impacts on pollinator populations. I'm sure you've heard a lot about bees and the various threats they've faced, but these increases in temperature and that kind of stress is affecting living things throughout the food chain and throughout our ecosystems. So it's also contributing to food insecurity and migration. Having a look at Latin America, we see that they have already been affected by floods, droughts, landslides, sea level rise, and tropical storms. So in Latin America by 2050, internal climate migrants could number over 140 million. And it's also contributing to the 6th mass extinction. So as I mentioned, the extreme heat, these natural disasters, all of these impacts are affecting all different groups of animals, from amphibians to fish and invertebrates. And you guys have probably heard about coral bleaching, and coral bleaching is affected by ocean temperature. So as the ocean is warming, it's stressing the corals, and the corals build like a city type structure in the ocean, and they're really important for about 25% of marine life around the world. So when corals are affected by climate change, it ripples through the entire marine ecosystem. It's hard to believe this has been a year already since this event, but in Biscayne Bay, when we had a huge fish die-off, which was attributed to fertilizers getting into the water, but also the temperature of the water. So warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. And with the increase in temperature, then there's less oxygen for fish to breathe. When this event happened, students went out and professors from FIU, and they took dissolved oxygen samples, and they found this huge area where there was either no oxygen represented by or almost no oxygen represented by the red dots, and too low oxygen represented by the yellow dots. So any number here, I know this is very tiny, but any number below 4 is too low a level of oxygen for fish and other water breathers to get enough oxygen to survive. So having set that stage, now it's time for us to look at the simulator, which Jeff is going to give an orientation to. I'm going to pull it up on my screen, I believe, right, Jeff? I'm going to pull it up on my screen. You're going to show it? I'll show it. Okay, but Jeff is going to give the overview of the levers, the different actions that you can take. And so this is the part where we're going to be coming to you to ask for your input of what you would like, the actions you'd like to take to create a better future for all of us. So I'm going to switch from this PowerPoint to the simulator now. And I may need to, I'm not sure what you can see since I'm sharing my screen. Can you all see, do you all just see a little black box on the right and you can see everything else?
I can see everything, Elaine.
Okay, great. So I'm going to see, let me know if you can still see everything well this way. Does that work? Does anything cut off?
It does.
Okay, great.
It does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. One thing I want to clarify, that this is an interactive program. We're not here to tell you what needs to be done. We're here to see what you want to see done, what you have done already, any actions that you have taken that you can relate to these graphs and these policies, and to explore the effect they have on what Elaine was talking about, the projected temperature increase by 2100. Is my cursor showing on the screen?
No, because I'm sharing my screen, so I
Okay,
can't see what
okay.
you're doing. So you tell me
So,
where to point.
A real quick overview on the left, you see the colored graph with the global sources of primary energy, which we know of coal, oil, gas, renewables is green, bioenergy, nuclear, and new zero, which is technology that is in development right now. So we're not too sure about what's going to happen with that, but not much in the next 10 years. And on the right, Elaine already showed you the projected temperature increase. So there are three main categories of policies. We have energy supply, which is depicted in the global sources of primary energy: coal, oil, gas, bioenergy, renewables, nuclear, new zero carbon, and a carbon price. Transportation, energy efficiency, electrification, which would be, electric cars, Teslas, energy efficiency, which would be like public transportation, building efficiency, which that's Vern's specialty as a lead certified presenter, and electrification of industry, which is changing over from gas heaters and gas cooking to electrified and whatever else you can electrify. And on the bottom, population and economic growth. Now, these are worldwide. Okay, we're looking at the big picture here. So it's mainly to give you a feel of what policies are going to be the most powerful. So the third category is land and industrial emissions. You can see deforestation, which we want to prevent. Methane and other gases like F gases, like fluorocarbons used in air conditioning. And then there's carbon renewal, which you may have been hearing a lot of lately, which can be taken place by the afforestation, the famous Trillion Trees program, and technological carbon removal. So those are the categories that you all can choose from, and let us know what you want to see, what policies you want to see put into effect.
So if you want to participate, feel free to raise your virtual hand at this time.
So Brian, the scenario is we are empowering the LCA as a group that has recommendations how we're going to reverse the current path towards 2100. And they're like the policyholders and makers, and we're giving them this tool in their forum to make the decision. We're going to actuate the levers as you make recommendations, and we'll do, Elaine and Jeff and I will point out some of the changes, and you will provide us input. It's real interactive. So
Cool.
let's put the LCA in power. And,
We're smart people. We're going to fix climate change tonight.
Yes, we are, and I believe we will.
Victoria, you got to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted. All right. Well, actually, I was thinking that we should start with Gabe because he's very big on nuclear energy. And we need to see how that would, if we bumped up our nuclear energy, how that would affect us for climate change. So how should we start this? Or do you want me to do mine and then Gabe, you come on there and do yours for nuclear? Because mine, I feel that I would like to start with buildings and energy, for energy efficiency.
Go ahead. I'll do you do yours, I'll put it in the.
Okay, then you'll go with yours. Okay, so
all right.
Let's start with transport for electrification, in lieu of gas. Then go to buildings for energy efficiency. I'm not sure how buildings would go with electrification, but I know we're trying to push buildings right now. Any new buildings would be green, would be built, green building, and everything with renewable energy.
Okay, Victoria, so you've given me a lot to work with here.
Okay.
So before I move any of the levers, I want to point out to you all that as Vern was saying, this is based on the latest science, and anything in here is within the bounds of reality. There's nothing you can do that's unrealistic. So I just want you to keep that in mind. And as Jeff pointed out, this is looking at taking action on a global level. So having said that, I'm going to start with transport electrification. And I'm going to ask you, how far along this line do you want me to move the lever between here and the other end? Meaning it can go all the way or part way.
Let's go about halfway.
Okay.
Wait for it, Elaine. Victoria,
Yes.
what effect do you think it might have on global temperature by 2100 if we electrified, sped up electrification of transportation?
Well, they're saying one of our biggest reasons of putting our biggest thing of putting carbon into the air is from all these all these big trucks that are on the
Yes.
road.
You're right,
That are-
about 25%, I think,
If not more.
if not more. You're right.
Because
So-
I just saw something on 60 Minutes that we're trying to do driverless trucking.
are-
Because,
Victoria, we are doing it.
oh,
We are doing
okay,
it. Yes.
already?
Yes.
So
They
what-
say that helps.
So how far do you think the temperature projection might change?
I'd go 25%.
So it would go
So in
down.
degrees.
In degrees, how much? What?
In degrees,
It's 3.6. We're trying to avoid. How much change from that?
okay. Let's hope it would go down to at least 2.5.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So I'm going to move it halfway. Okay, I'm going to replay that change so you can see I really did it. So we incentivized electrification and that moved it 0.1 Fahrenheit.
Wow.
It did something.
It did
Did something.
something.
Small
Not
step.
much.
Not much.
So,
It's
so
impressive.
Victoria,
So
from that's the
then-
first
so-
policy.
Right.
Oh,
And
so
then she
first
said,
policy effect. Yes.
then she said building energy efficiency,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
how far do you want me to move that one?
About 3/4.
Okay, and what effect do you think it'll have on the temperature? We're not going to ask this every time, just early on so you start to get a
Okay,
feel
so
for.
temperature, I would hope it would bring it down to 2.0.
Okay, so I'm going to move it to here if it will move there. Let's see.
Wow.
Okay, so we see a change. We're increasing efficiency, so we're reducing our use of our fuel sources. But the temperature goes down by 0.4, but only by 0.4. Mhm. And then the next one was electrification of buildings.
Yes,
Okay, how far do you want that one to go?
about halfway or point back to 2.5.
Okay, I don't know what that means. So, oh, you're saying the temperature? You think it'll get the
No,
temperature
no,
to 2.5?
she's saying 50% increase in electrification of buildings. Is that what you mean by that, Victoria? Halfway of the
Correct.
full capabilities of current technology.
Oh, she said 2 TO 0.5. Okay, got it. There we
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's helping a little. Now let's go to, well, there's
Hey, give us a chance.
Victoria?
Brian, who's in charge over there?
Yeah, let's go. Let's give me a chance.
Question, Victoria.
Okay.
Are you curious why transportation? I mean, it doesn't sound logical, right? Why transportation electrification had so little of a change?
Yes, that was curious because they're saying that we get so much carbon from all these trucks throwing this stuff into the air.
What do you think?
Now, that's because they're gas powered, correct?
What do you think, Elaine? Should we show her the 3 dots,
We can on transport electrification.
right?
Yes.
Wow.
So here we have more detail. So we
So
can accelerate
if-
road and rail, electrification of new transport by air and water, and the percentage and the year that it begins, or that it accelerates.
If you look at the last part of the sentence on the top, it says, if the electricity is from low carbon sources like solar and wind.
Right.
Mhm.
So where does our energy come from? To charge up your cars?
It's, oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Coal and gas.
Yeah, well, gas or, yeah,
Well, nuclear and gas mostly in South Florida.
okay.
But overall, around the country, does anybody know, Vern or Elaine, know what percentage of our electricity still is from coal? I think it's more than 50%, right?
It's huge.
I thought it
It's-
was lower.
No.
That much?
Nationwide.
Let me see.
Well, it's a lot.
It's a lot, yes, indeed.
That's why that lever didn't move more.
Wow.
Right, and then considering that this is looking at the global picture, there's a lot of coal being used around the world. So-
World, yeah.
Mhm.
So for, okay, so growth, that's gonna be hard. Because
So
I don't know.
Victoria, this is part of the process. It's iterative. So your first suggestion is in effect as we speak, and the other members of your team will build on the solution. We have made progress. We're now at plus 3.2. We were at 3.6 at the start. So we're on the right path. And the members of your team will contribute to the further decline with their ideas.
Okay,
There's hope.
there's hope.
Yes.
So as far as, let's go to energy supply. Well, we're pretty much renewables. Can we push that over some?
Well, didn't you say Gabe wanted to try nuclear?
Yes.
How about we do
Okay,
this?
so let's hear
Let's
from
give Jamie a chance, and then let's go to Gabe. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Victoria.
all right.
Thank you, Victoria. So I was thinking like to do what we can do first, right? Like what's the easiest to accomplish? But now that you say, I mean, so then after this conversation we just had, I would say bring coal down, right? And then bring deforestation down, because those are two things we can probably, deforestation, if we could stop that globally, like just
Yeah.
you know, make a UN resolution to stop deforesting, that would be the first thing I would attempt. And then afforestation, I would imagine means increasing the
Forests,
forestry.
yeah.
Right. So I would move those unilaterally, like, you know, in opposite directions.
We
So
can't
Elaine-
even, we
Bring
can't even stop.
deforestation down to a quarter.
Okay,
Okay, so we're moving to deforestation before coal. Okay,
Right. Because I
so
think
you
that
want me
would
to,
be easier.
you want me to bring this down to here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I also want to point out that if you bring deforestation down all the way, it's not saying that it will be zero.
Right.
It's just saying you'll bring it down as much as possible.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring
Yeah.
it down to 3/4. Okay, so we saw that
And-
moved at another 0.1.
Yes, we did.
And at the
Yes.
same time, I would
Bring up afforestation.
Bring afforestation.
How
yes.
much?
like, well, this wouldn't be as easy to add forest, I would imagine, as it would be to stop the deforestation. So let's move it halfway.
Okay, I'm gonna put it here. Okay, so
And
we saw a
then-
little movement in the Fahrenheit. We see this move down just a touch.
Touch,
It makes
yeah.
a little difference. Okay,
Not
And
as
then-
much as I'd hoped for. So then I would go now, based on the conversation we had, I would go to the energy supply, and before even adding the supply, I would lower the coal and oil and natural gas.
Okay.
okay. How far do you want to
Like,
move
like
coal?
it probably couldn't be much, right? So realistic, well, you said nothing's unrealistic, but I would move both coal and oil to the halfway mark, just like to look at the next 20 years, maybe.
Okay, here we go. So we get 0.1 from coal and 0.1 from oil, from moving them both halfway. And then natural gas?
Yeah,
Okay, same?
yeah.
Okay.
And with bioenergy is what, burning wood? Is that what that is?
Yes.
And it can also be
Organic
corn, any
material.
plant-based,
Yeah.
any plant-based material.
Well, yeah, I would bring that one down too.
How far?
And then I would, down to a quarter, just to
Okay.
try and just keep it realistic, and then I'll pass it on.
Okay, so I'm going to replay that last change.
Yeah.
So at this stage, based on the other policies, the other actions that you all would have taken, we don't see any meaningful change in the temperature. We see a little bit, of course, of change in the wedge that's represented by bioenergy here, that pink wedge. It gets a little bit smaller.
Wow.
Let us go, let us now go to methane. And let's get that down very low, because I know methane is a big carbon, makes a lot of carbon. And I love Maida's comment to eat less meat.
Well, Victoria, with that comment, Elaine, can you share with the audience the caloric value of the various hydrocarbon and hydrofluorocarbon with respect to how they impact the climate, the global temperatures?
You asked me?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So as far as the warming potential for these different greenhouse gases, so we have carbon dioxide, which represents essentially 1 unit of warming per molecule of carbon dioxide. But if you compare methane and the F gases that Jeff talked about, as well as nitrous oxide, they have much more warming potential. So methane is almost 25 times more, warms the atmosphere 25 times more per molecule as CO2. And then nitrous oxide is hundreds of times more powerful, and F gases are thousands of times more powerful. So,
Wow.
So by
No.
reducing those, we can have a major impact.
Good job,
Thanks,
Victoria.
Yeah.
So
Let's
how
see it.
far do you
Wow.
want to go?
For methane, at least 3/4.
Okay, so we'll bring it to here.
Let's see if
Right.
that helps.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
So yes, that gets us down 0.4.
Oh,
We're getting
yes.
closer to the first dotted line.
Wow. So methane is a really big factor.
Elaine, also, can you share with the audience the agenda? There's a time limit for which we need to get to 1.5. And I think that has changed recently.
So are you talking about when we're expected to reach 1.5 degrees at this point?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so basically on this graph, anywhere we put the cursor, it gives us information. And so we can see that we are expected to reach 1.5 degrees in the next 6 to 7 years.
Holy crap.
2027 to
Right.
2028, we will be at 1.5. And now in 2021, we're already at almost 1.3 degrees.
I brought that up, Elaine, because I think Victoria mentioned or Jamie mentioned about 2 decades of, it will take to effect. It seems like we don't have 2 decades. We have
No.
less than
Yeah,
that.
but that's what
So there's
the
an
global,
urgency to the solution. I thought I'd put that out there for you to contemplate as you seek new policies.
Can we move on to Gabe, please?
All right. Max out the nuclear and get rid of the coal.
Okay, so first I'll move nuclear all the way. Okay, so at this stage, that gets us another 0.1, and we see how increasing nuclear affects the amount of the other fuel sources we're using.
Wow.
And then coal, I'll bring all the way down, and I will let Jeff comment on that one. Let's see.
Well, I think the most interesting thing for me, if you could replay that for Gabe to see what happens with the global sources of energy when we put in nuclear.
Sure, I'll bring coal back and then I'll move nuclear again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so here's nuclear one more time, and I'll move that and replay that. So here we go.
So you can see nuclear growing.
Wow.
And the green shrinks.
Mhm.
And what are your thoughts about that, Gabe? Have you looked into,
Looks
have you heard
good.
about that before?
What's the green one?
Is renewables.
Renewables.
Oh, the
Wind and
renewable
solar.
shrink, right? Oh, okay, okay. Oh, yeah, no, I know a bit about. Question though, is that nuclear include nuclear shipping? Because we're capable of doing that. The Navy does that. I don't know if that's in this thing.
I don't think it covers commercial shipping.
Okay.
I haven't read anything about commercial shipping going nuclear. I've heard about them going hydrogen,
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay.
but the other thing about nuclear, it's really hard to see on the blue line on the right. It takes a while
Oh, you
before
want me
it
to
kicks
show you
in.
Yeah.
that? Here? Yes.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good way, yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
It
No, that's
doesn't-
true.
yeah, it takes some time. So,
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
but you know, the fact that it competes with renewables shows that they're both inexpensive. So we have graphs that show all the price of energy and everything, but you could take my word for it, the price of energy would go down.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe, do you have another suggestion?
Oh, I need to
Oh,
move coal. I need to move coal again.
yeah,
Yes.
move
Wanna
coal
move
down.
that?
We could get
Okay,
rid
yeah,
of
there we
that.
go. So we
We could get
captured
rid of
that.
that, man.
Well,
That's
we
the worst.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Well, I would say a carbon price. And put that at half, I guess. Raise it by
Okay.
put it in the middle.
Okay, so
Wow.
that was significant.
That was, it was
Wow.
Mm,
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
For
0.4.
Wow. Yeah, that's big.
Okay, can we explain, could you guys explain what carbon price is exactly?
That's Jeff's area of expertise.
Yes, Jeff, take it away.
Jeff
That's
wanted to give
seriously-
them some background about the organizations that you and I are a part of,
Well,
so
that's,
that we are in the interest of full disclosure.
a carbon price is what Citizens Climate Lobby has been lobbying for 14 years.
Wow.
And,
And
We
Jeff and I
actually
are
have-
members of the Citizens Climate Lobby, but this may say so.
Mm,
right. So basically, a carbon price entails three things. First is that you put a tax or a fee on the emissions, the CO2 emitted. And if you noticed, coal got reduced the most. That's because coal emits the highest amount of CO2 per unit of energy. Okay, so it would be taxed higher than oil and gas. So basically, the tax is put on the fuel at the port of entry, the mine, where it comes out of the ground. And the second part is that what to do with the money. So we could go to a graph, but trust me, it would bring about $5 trillion into the economy with a high carbon price. Unfortunately, we also raise the price of our electricity and gas so that people wouldn't like that. So one of the suggestions that Citizens Climate Lobby's lobbying for is that the money get returned to all American households equally.
Wow.
And it has been analyzed to show that people in the lower income brackets would come out ahead because they use less fuel. So if they're getting the same amount as your millionaire down the street, the millionaire is using more fuel, he'll come out behind. Okay, so it's kind of a leveler. And what the carbon price essentially does is it affects many different areas of the economy. It will incentivize, first of all, power companies that use a lot of coal to get rid of their coal. That's going to be the first thing that goes. So if we did this thing all over again and showed just the carbon price without coal, coal would go down proportionally to what we have it right now. And then down the road, it would affect transportation and energy efficiency because you save money if you have an electric car or if you have an electric water heater instead of a gas water heater. So it would trickle into all aspects of the economy, which is why it's so powerful. And of course, industry would want to make sure that they are protected from imports from countries that don't have a carbon fee, that haven't paid that tax to produce their goods. So there has to be a border carbon adjustment. So those are the three parts of a carbon price. I know it went a little fast. Anybody have any questions?
What happens if it goes all the way on that carbon price? All
There
the
you
way
go.
through?
Yes. Uh-oh.
I have a question. Didn't the UN just agree to start doing carbon taxing?
Well, there's 42 countries in the world right now that have carbon taxing. That includes the European Union, Canada, Mexico, China, and 38 other countries. We are behind in that department. The government just passed the third leg, the border carbon adjustment. They just passed a bill to have a border carbon adjustment in the United States. And it's really interesting because our products like steel and aluminum are produced with a lot less CO2 emissions than a lot of other countries, which is the reason industry wants to have that border carbon adjustment. And it's going to lead to a price on carbon, because when that tax or tariff on imports goes to the, what do they call the International Trade and Tariff? There's an International Trade and Tariff organization, you know, like the World Bank. It's, the GATT.
Again, yes.
Right.
General
Anyway,
Agreement on Tariff and Trade.
When it goes to them, they're going to say you
Mhm.
can't have a border carbon price, a border carbon adjustment without a carbon price. It's illegal. This is what I've read. So it's going to incentivize Congress to say, hey, we need to get with the rest of the world. And you can see this is like the single biggest policy. Of course, we haven't touched on population or economic growth, but you might see this is big.
So I'm
I
going to
don't-
move it all the way
Could
now.
we even stop population? I
Well,
mean,
we're not stopping the population, Victoria. We're slowing the growth. It's growing, but at a lower growth rate.
and how do we do that?
There's a number of incentive. There's correlation that shows that more professional women or more working women in a society, the population rate goes down. Economics, as more women or more people move to the middle class, so to speak, the growth rate goes down. So there are a number of policies to effect that change.
And one thing I would point out with this graph is what you're seeing for this graph here is business as usual, not making any changes. And the population is expected to level off by the end of this century as it is. So that's where we're headed currently.
Okay.
So Victoria, would you like us to use that lever?
Pardon?
Would you like us to use that? Elaine, can you go back to the?
So the main, I can do it here as well.
Okay, yes, okay,
Okay.
there we go.
And then we can see what the projected population will be by 2100.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then we gotta
Tell me.
convince a bunch of white people that, you know, they should stop having babies, sure.
I hate to say it's yeah, we're not the ones having babies. It's I hate to say it's different minorities have more children than Caucasians. We're more apt to be interested in careers and not having as many children.
It's third world countries, Victoria.
Yeah.
Jeff, the term is emerging countries.
Oh,
Right. Emerging countries, I'm sorry.
Good answer.
there you
And
go.
another
Right,
thing,
and as they
to
move
think
to the middle
about
class.
with
No
these
worries.
parameters is, you know, as girls have more access to education and women
Yes.
have more access to careers, just like what we're seeing here in the US with this sort of spreading of the generations. You know, if you think about decades back, you know, a lot of people would marry at age 20, sometimes 18, and have kids around 20 and between 20 and 25. And now a lot of younger people who are now getting older, they are not having kids until their 30s and sometimes 40. So that spreading of the generations is also causing a decline in the overall population.
Yeah.
I just have a prediction. When you do adjust the population, I don't think it's going to affect it that much. Or did you already do it?
I haven't touched it yet.
Yes, we're gonna
Oh,
see it. Don't break the
It's gonna have a
suspense,
huge
Brian.
effect because people put, I mean, it's gonna have a huge effect in my opinion.
Okay,
how
Elaine,
far do you want me to move it?
Move it halfway of what's left, just, you know.
Okay, here we go.
do that again, Elaine.
How much did it move?
Well, it didn't affect the temperature.
Didn't
It
affect the
did affect the
temperature.
amount of our fuel use since there are fewer people. So we see these wedges come down a little bit.
Mhm.
I was right.
You were right. So, you know, as Jeff was mentioning, when he talked about if you move the carbon price in isolation, and as Vernal said in the introduction, you know, this is a systemic simulator. So it's looking at how is an action affecting the projection after all these other actions you've taken. So if you were to say move population by itself, you might see a little bit more of a change.
Right.
If you move the carbon price first, you may see more of a change. So you have to keep in mind that some of the other policy actions that you all have already proposed is part of the reason you're not seeing much change when you reduce population.
Yes.
Just to give
sense.
an
Gabe,
example of that that's near and dear to my heart, if we started out with a high carbon price, instead of lowering the temperature 0.4 of a degree, it would have lowered the temperature more like 6 or 0.8 of a degree.
So I can actually show that because I like to open multiple tabs here so we can do
Yes.
that.
Great.
Yes, you could save
so-
that simulation, Elaine.
Yeah, it's still here.
Mhm.
So what we're
Okay.
working on is the first one. I've got it. And now I'm going to show you if we move carbon price all the way to the right, what that does. So yes, as Jeff was saying, it does move the temperature by 1 whole degree, if that
And
were
look
the
at-
first thing we did.
Yes, and you know,
Wow.
I want to expand on that, Elaine, and that
Mhm.
is simply just writing of a legislation. That's simply a policy change. There's no technological invention required here. If we were to effect maximum carbon pricing on our current economy, that number represent the change, what we'll see. And it's the simplest of the solutions that we see here, and it's the easiest to effect.
Gabe,
So
you
we
still
could
have,
build on that, right? You know, we could build on that scenario.
And what is the reality of carbon removal? I mean,
Guys,
Carbon
just for the
removal,
sake
oh,
of-
yes.
can we just have our hands raised if we want to?
I'm sorry, Brian, you're right. Yeah.
Yes.
Gabe, you have your hand raised. Do you still want to add?
No, take it down. I was already, take it down. I'll take it down.
Okay. Victoria, you have your hand raised. Do you want to?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't take it down because my icons are like almost hidden, so.
So yeah, if you have a suggestion,
There we
raise
go.
your hand and I'll pick on you. I just want to go real quick if that's okay for the changes. So question, Mr. Scientist, which category here is would apply to agriculture industry?
So one of those is methane and other. So that has a lot to do with agriculture.
Okay, can we reduce it all the way?
Sure. Let's bring it all the way down. So that gets us another 0.1
Wow.
at this
Wow.
stage. Yeah, that's how powerful those gases are.
Wow.
Would industry, it says buildings and industry,
Mhm.
does industry include agriculture there?
Let's see. Here, it doesn't mention anything about agriculture,
Okay,
just reducing the amount of energy factories use.
Factories, yeah. And that could be anything. Well, Brian, a lot of agriculture is like industry. You know, it's an industrial farming process.
Right.
It's almost indistinguishable from what you would think of a traditional mechanical electrical factory. You know,
Right,
it's
so it may be
production,
partially
Yes.
encompassed by transportation
transportation,
and buildings
building
and
and
industry.
industries.
Mhm.
The 3 dots on methane and others show some agricultural points.
Right, that's what I was saying before, is
Yeah.
that
Right.
the mass of agriculture is encompassed in methane and other.
Mhm.
Got it. So can we please lower the electrification, no, sorry, increase the electrification for buildings and industry
Okay, how far?
all the way, please?
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Getting
Cool.
close.
And what about,
Wow.
can we also increase electrification for transport all the way?
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that wasn't that much, actually.
But we see the line does come down a little bit.
Yes, there's change.
And we see some movement over here in our
Yeah,
fuel
yes.
use.
Because
The
one
mix
time
of
I saw this
fuels.
graph that said like per industries, what was the most emitting industries, and agriculture was number one. So I was, I'm trying to pinpoint that.
Mhm.
You have to remember this is like it's like a representation of a simultaneous activity. You know, we're not it's hard to look at the world in isolated forms, and it's rather more complex. And this model kind of capture that complexity mathematically here.
Got it.
I wonder, Brian, if you have seen different levels of reports of agricultural methane and waste and deforestation effects in the environment. Like some reports show it almost 50%, and some reports show it 25%. Have you seen that at all?
Yeah, I've noticed that they vary sometimes.
I think because there's so many factors involved.
Yes, it's
Trees, methane, waste products, so many
transportation.
fertilizer.
Yeah.
Tom has his hand raised. If you would like to take it.
Yes, you haven't touched 3 of the graph items. I'm interested to see what effect they would have. The first one is the renewables. So promoting renewables, and I would suggest maxing that out under energy supply.
Okay, here we go. So I'm going to replay that. So we see that it definitely increases the amount of renewables used compared to some of the other sources. And we see some of those sources come down a little bit earlier, like the use of gas. At this stage in the simulation, we don't see a movement in the temperature though.
Okay,
It
but,
seems to affect.
leaving that in place, I want to do one thing a little different, which is on economic growth. I like to increase economic growth.
Okay.
It's easier to have a middle class if you have an increasing economy. So if you can take that up halfway to the maximum, I like to see what impact that has, although it might be in the wrong direction. I'd still like to know what the impact is.
Okay, that's what the simulator is useful for.
Yes,
We can
but it's-
try
yes.
it and see. All right, here we go. Okay, so that's about halfway. And I see this line move a tiny, tiny bit, but
Tiny
we
bit,
don't see any
yeah.
register on the temperature. And we see how it changes the amount of energy use.
Right.
So
And, then
Tom-
and the last one I
Mhm.
note is we haven't touched technology yet. A lot of people are talking about that's going to be what's going to save us. But let's assume they're half right and go halfway up on technology under the category of land and industry emissions.
Okay, so you're talking here carbon
technological
removal?
Carbon renewal.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so you want to move halfway.
Halfway.
Okay, here we go.
I assume Bill Gates is half right.
Okay,
That's
so
a
there we
big one.
see that, you know,
There we go.
understandably, it has no impact on our energy mix over here because we're just removing carbon from the atmosphere. But we do see that movement in the temperature down by 0.3.
Oh, yeah.
So by
and for
2100, we would
and for
be
those that
below
are paying
1.5.
attention, if we get it down to 1.5 or below, in terms of the maximum global warming, South Florida has a chance to see the 22nd century.
Yes.
And if you don't, well, then South Florida is toast.
So we have a graph here for the projected sea level rise. I can show you what's happening there. So with all of the actions that you all have proposed so far put together, this is what the projected sea level rise would be. And again, it's not leveling off, so it would continue to increase past 2100. But instead of being at almost 1.2 meters by 2100, we would be at 0.85, 0.86.
Which is about a foot. If I'm, no, it's
So
about,
it's over
it's
2
over
feet.
2 feet.
it's about 2 feet. And if those people, you showed that map in the earlier presentation that Elaine did. I saw those maps being developed 7 years ago at FIU, and I was there. And what's interesting is we can probably tolerate about 2 feet of sea level rise. When it moves from 3 to 4, you lose a whole bunch of land. And so keeping it, at least for the time being, at 2 feet or under is a very good strategy for South Florida. And it means after the 21st century or leading up to the 22nd century, maybe there'll be additional changes we make to bend it down so it doesn't keep going up. But the point is, at 1.4, your sea level rise is manageable. When you go much higher than that, it probably is not manageable.
Oh, that's a good point, Tom.
Excellent
I have a question.
information.
Question
Vic-
for Elaine. Elaine,
Yes.
have you had a chance to look at the highlights from the report last week that was released from the IPCC?
I've seen summaries, yes.
One of the most depressing things that I read in it, of course, it's all gloom and doom, is that sea level rise will continue to rise for millenniums, even if we keep down to 1.5 degrees.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's baked in.
Baked in, yes.
Of course,
indeed.
it will be slower and lower the more we can reduce our carbon, but yeah, I'm sorry, Tom.
Brian, I have a question. Are you monitoring the chat? I see questions from your members in the chat.
Yeah, I was thinking we could do questions more towards the end.
Yeah.
I think we should finish this first.
Okay, so it seems like, Brian, that we have, Lynn, can you go back to the temperature graph that showed the success?
Yes.
It seems like we have achieved the goal of being less than 1.5 by the end of the century through the policies that we effected here tonight.
Yay!
Right? Round of
Yay.
applause to the LCA
Yay.
Policy Task Force.
There's a theme song from Don Quixote that I want to sing.
Brian, is that okay for singing? We didn't sign up for that.
Yes.
You know, we never touched on energy efficiency. Should we move that a little bit?
Okay. How much, Victoria?
Halfway.
Okay.
Okay. So increasing energy efficiency for transportation helps reduce our overall use of energy. But it doesn't have an impact on the temperature at this stage in these
Wow.
series of
Yeah,
actions.
Is that because of Javon's paradox? You know what I'm talking about?
I think it could be, well, I'm not familiar with the paradox, but I think at this
All right.
point, Victoria, in the process, sequentially, we have removed so much carbon usage from our economy
Yeah.
that
But it just-
energy, we're just using renewable energy more efficiently now with this new policy, which is also good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By the
go
way,
ahead.
Javon, yeah, I'm sorry. Javon's
Yes.
paradox, just to let people know, it's kind of a market mechanism, really. It says that, you know, this is a general rule that as the energy gets more efficient, people use it more and it offsets the efficiency. So if air travel becomes, if airlines become more energy efficient, the price of the tickets go down and more people fly. That's an example. That's probably why that didn't move with the temperature. That's my guess.
Well,
I think that
so
might,
yeah, go ahead.
real quick, I think
Brian.
that paradox is interesting because I think that may have would also apply to advancements with carbon removal and technological carbon removal. Like if we know that there's these machines that could suck up all the carbon, then maybe some people would be less cautious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Well, so what I would posit, I believe, you know, what you're saying, that you know, people would sort of fill in that gap. I'm hoping that people will be sufficiently alarmed by the situation we're in not to do those things. But I will show you here what it would look like if we just moved transportation energy efficiency by half. So if we did nothing else at that point, it would move the temperature down a little bit. And you see, of course, again, it reduces the use of our different sources of energy.
Okay, I think that we are on the verge of going into the last part of our presentation. Actually, we started debriefing ourselves, so can
Want me to go
I
to the slides? Jeff?
go ahead and no, I can do it. If
Okay,
I can, if I can get
Oh, you
share-
need to
screen
share your
share?
screen. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
I
can
need
you make me a
to,
host?
yes, I'll need to do that. Hang on.
Okay.
Let me just figure out. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to email Victoria the link to the scenario you all created so
Oh,
that you
cool.
all can see it later.
Yes.
Great.
So, okay, now I need to figure out where I go. Do I go to participants, Brian?
Yeah, participants, and then go to
Okay.
him.
And while we're shifting, we have a second here. I want to let everybody know that this is open access. You can type in En-ROADS on your computer and play with this to your heart's content.
Cool.
Okay. Let's see. Uh-oh. Okay, hold on a second.
Also, in the meantime, if you have questions, you can raise your virtual hand or put it in the chat.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So, of course, Elaine started off with the doom and gloom, which is what usually you get when you have a presentation on climate. And of course, you'll get more if you read last week's IPCC report. But Andrew Jones, the impetus behind the creation of this program, asked that we take a minute and just consider this experience and this better future that we have just created, to let that soak in for a minute. Okay? Take the time to see what resonates with you about this possible future. We're going to take a minute. I'm going to set the timer right now. And anything that pops in your mind when you're envisioning this future reality, what it looks like, smells like, whether you're excited or worried, you might want to jot it in the chat. Okay, I'm starting the timer right now. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's see if we can stop this buzzer. I got my new phone. All right, we have some comments in the chat. Brotherhood, Jamie writes. Would you like to elaborate, Jamie?
Well, that's what it's going to take. I mean, well, you know, when I envision a future where we're, you know, making these things happen, it feels like that we've all come together. Yeah. And that we realize, you know, we're talking about the extinction of humanity. So when I envision it working, I envision it being brotherhood. Yeah.
And we have to look out for our brothers and sisters.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And four-legged friends.
Yeah.
That's in conflict with those people that are concerned about the bottom line.
Right.
Lorenzo writes, extremely concerned about the future of humanity. I hear some anxiety on that. Lorenzo, would you like to share a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Because we are dealing, especially in our country, with a large amount of people that don't seem to be able to comprehend reality or face reality as it is. While we have been in this program, my wife has told me about 2 people in my family. One is dying from COVID, and the other one cannot find a hospital because they are so full of people. We have all the possibilities of being able to have prevented that, but people refuse to act on it and to listen to it. And if that is in such a tangible situation as it is with COVID, I tell you the truth, I am very concerned that all these ideas that were proposed here tonight that will be so beneficial, is an exercise in futility.
You know, I heard from somebody that's been involved in the climate battle for years that said she's tired. She's not giving up, but she's tired because it's a tough struggle. What you're talking about is tough work, Lorenzo.
I know. And some of the things like the brotherhood, all these beautiful things, that's fine. But somehow we need to penetrate those people that are impeding progress on the climate, COVID, all these other issues that are affecting humanity that might make us blow up.
Right.
Great. Can I
Exactly.
answer the question real quick?
Yes.
I imagine breathability, because one thing that would come from electrification and the absence of fossil fuels is that the air would just be nicer and asthma rates would go down. So that would be a benefit. I think we would all breathe a little bit better.
Yes, Brian, amen to that. I have had asthma since I was little, and I would very much appreciate cleaner air. I mean, I ride a bicycle around South Florida and I'm breathing tailpipe exhaust every day, and it's really irritating to my lungs. And I'm sure that it affects, millions of other people the same way. And absolutely, it would, contribute to better public health all around, healthier communities.
We had a member from Holland at the Citizens Climate Lobby for about 6 months, a year or two ago, and she said, I just feel so dirty everywhere I go. People don't clean out their recyclables, the gas smells everywhere. She lived in Hallandale, right across from the racetrack. So Tom had quite a few comments. Tom, would you like to read some of that?
Well, I'll summarize it.
Okay.
We're having a very interesting conversation. I like the simulation very much. I, like Elaine, have asthma and understand what air quality can do to people's health. But I'm also politically experienced from another life. And unless the Miami-Dade County Commission, and I pick on them particularly, as well as the mayor, decides to get up and set an example for the rest of the world to follow, then we're not going to be heard. Now, they'll probably stop climate warming at, say, 2 or 2.5 degrees, and we'll be gone, but Switzerland will be doing just fine. And so what you have to realize is that we, like the Pacific Islanders, are one of the early communities to disappear, whether it be extreme heat or hurricanes or climate change or pandemics. It doesn't really matter. We're just more vulnerable because of our location. And unless they stick to a Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degrees or less, we're toast. So this is sort of like Horton Hears a Who. If we don't speak up for ourselves, nobody's going to do it for us. And so the trouble is that the timeline set by the Paris Agreement, set by the UN's climate change framework convention, says the world leaders, all of whom are sociopaths making decisions in their own best interest, have to come to an agreement to save South Florida and the Pacific Islands or not. And if they decide it's not worth the effort and we don't speak up, then shame on us. That conference is occurring in Glasgow, Scotland, in the United Kingdom on November 1st through the 12th. I have every reason to believe it'll be extended either into the month of December or possibly into the first several months of 2022, just a guess, but I have a belief that's what they're planning. And the reason is people aren't ready to get serious about a final workable, credible solution to climate change that your simulation explained. And because they're not serious yet, the ones who are most at risk need to be shouting pretty loud not to close down deliberations until they come to a 1.5 degree limit on climate change answer. Because the failure to come to that answer means a decade from now, it's impossible to fix the problem. And 3 decades from now, many of us will be gone. That's how serious it is. Some people know this. Some people are hiding from it. Some people don't want to talk about it because it hurts current business. Some people are planning their getaway to North Carolina. But the community at large is at great risk. And nobody is yet, current company excluded, speaking about it in forceful terms. I want to just mention that my personal hero is Greta Thunberg. She speaks her mind. There's no doubt what she's saying, but she's not getting traction either. And she's done a tremendous job of getting attention, but actual real policy change hadn't happened yet. And if Dade County is going to stay silent, and Broward can be right behind them, but Dade County is the community known globally, Miami Beach, known globally. If South Florida speaks up, with Dade County taking the lead, then there's a chance at least we'll be heard before we go away. And that's better than not speaking up when there's still time.
Wow, you touched on so many things.
Yes, indeed.
You know, perseverance, you know, making ourselves heard, taking action, so many important things, and brotherhood too. We have to work together. You
Well,
know,
I think
that's
if
what
I
Glenda
can, it's brotherhood, agreed. And certainly the labor movement in this group ought to, you know, be recognized for the great effort they're making. But until you convince your Dade County commissioners and your mayor to speak up in a time frame that matters, somewhere between now and November, they're the only ones likely to be heard. They're the ones that have a microphone. Now, all of us have got to speak up, but they're the ones who can get actually in the meetings within the U.S. or within the COP26 meetings that will make a difference. The average citizen isn't going to get there. Now, the labor unions could have this impact because they have an impact on the county commissioners and the mayor, but it's the county commission and the mayors who have the only shot at getting into the meetings where our fate is being decided.
Well, just a quick story. Who's Maria Salazar? That's the new congresswoman from Miami, right?
Yes.
The leaders of the Miami CCL chapter met with her several months ago. And you know what she said to them? She said, you know, I don't hear too much from my constituents about this issue, the climate issue.
Wow. Well, she's
Her
not listening.
constituents are Republicans that don't believe in climate change.
Well, and there's a lot of people that I asked to make a phone call and to take some action. They say, yeah, I'll do it. And they don't do it, you know,
Well,
because I think people really don't believe they're going to be heard.
That's what I was referring to. That was what I was referring to in regards to the problem that we're having. The evidence can be presented and could be clear, like the evidence in COVID is clear, but people don't seem to be able to connect. Their brain cells are dead, and they are not able to connect. And but we cannot stop, because they affect us, and they affect our families, they affect our grandchildren, they affect it means having to find ways. Tom raised the issue of the county mayor. Look, we better take advantage of the situation that we have now. We have Danielle Levin Cava as the county mayor in Miami-Dade, and she is good. She is she's somebody like us here. She is like, if we cannot make inroads with somebody like her, we are in, we are really deep trouble.
Let me respond. Let me respond to that. Yes, the mayor is a good person who understands the problem. She's also got a county commission who's not yet convinced, if I would make an assumption. So what needs to happen is everybody's going to give climate change lip service on the Dade County Commission, in the mayor's office. The question is, will they act? So one of the things I would suggest you is, this is a great simulation. Figure out a way to invite the mayor and the county commissioners that will join you, and doing the same kind of presentation and simulation, and see what they come up with. And then through labor, which is the biggest stick on this phone, because labor gets paid attention to at the Dade County Commission and at the mayor's level, regardless of whether they're Democrat or Republican, and suggest to them that this problem is right now and they need to act. And only if they hear it from lots of citizens will they take the effort it takes to be heard at the COP26.
Well,
so Tom, if I can just quickly, touch on that. So through my position, I'm connected with sustainability staff throughout Florida, including in Miami-Dade County. I don't know that I could be successful only by talking with those staff and, asking to have that audience. So I wonder, do you have any connections with any of those people at all? Or does anyone on this call have any connections with the elected officials?
I have connection with Danielle Levin. I have connection with Danielle Levin Cava. I helped her become, and she will be the first one to tell you, that I helped her become a commissioner way back then. And kind of help plot the campaign.
Good job, Lorenzo.
Using my ability as a union organizer, right? That's what I did. Now, the thing with Daniela, if she can find the time and come here, an hour and a half might be a little bit too much.
We can go there.
When you do one person, sometimes you can do, a shorter stint. And also, like, we could do, like, if we could schedule it with her directly, as opposed to inviting her to this group, that might open up her schedule possibilities a bit more.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest to you is this. Again, a specific suggestion based upon some history in the political world. I send texts, which Daniela responds to very frequently for the last 2 years, about climate change. So she knows the issue. What she doesn't have is a county commission ready to not beat her over the head if she looks to be too extreme. And of course, in our situation, if you're not extreme, you're not going to make it. Extreme based upon an emergency is okay. So the emergency isn't seen yet. They haven't seen things like your simulation, which makes it real easy. If you don't do a whole bunch of things, you don't get down to 1.5. And there's plenty of people at University of Miami, Hal Wendlas, and at FIU, Todd Crow, who will say, if you don't keep the sea level rise under 2 feet, you're toast. So it's pretty easy to make the arguments, and they understand them. They just don't know if it's going to happen in a time frame soon enough to matter, because they're all planning to go to North Carolina in about 10 years. So you have to you have to find a way to do a Zoom meeting, and the best way to do that would be whoever is in control of this meeting. I assume you have our email addresses. Send us a nice email telling us how wonderful it was to have this meeting tonight, how thoughtful it was, how informing it was, and that we ought to do the same thing with the mayor and the county commissioners in Dade County, and, for example, Broward County or Palm Beach. It doesn't matter to me.
Yes.
But Dade County is the focus, because they're the ones that'll be internationally recognized.
Yeah.
And if you do that invite, then whoever's on this call could join in. Daniela could join in. You set up at the same time or separate times similar meetings with the county commissioners, most of whom will do it, particularly if people like Lorenzo does the follow-up request after the email is sent, copying everybody here. By the way, add Todd Crow at FIU, and add Hal Wanless at University of Miami, because they're the ones who can back up some of the science. And you can have a thoughtful conversation. I want to compliment you that the simulation is impactful. It'll help them get past the fact that they don't think they can do anything that'll make a difference. They
Thanks,
can,
Tom.
but they have to speak up.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I do want to make sure that our guest speakers are able to finish their presentation, so we can move on to Q&A part. So Jeffrey, you have the floor.
Okay, well, you know, I want to recognize that also that Maida had a comment that was we have to consider changes that's going to affect people with all of these changes that we're talking about, like economic changes, like the price of energy. And Wendy, and these are some of the things that you know you're going to hear from commissioners that don't agree with the change. It's going to raise the price of electricity, is what you hear all the time. And Wendy said, what if we use capitalism to our advantage, invest in renewables? Wendy, that's what a carbon fee and dividend does. Thank you very much. So to get to the wrap up, first of all, I think we saw a lot of surprises, right? Anybody want to comment on one or two that they might have seen real quick? Victoria, electric vehicles, was that a surprise?
Yes, it was.
And how about
I
key
was
insights?
expecting it to be more.
Key insights.
You're not going to get there without Gates helping you.
Right. It's the technology that's going to save us in the end.
There's a lot of different
It's part of the
things.
answer.
There's a
It's
lot
part of the
things.
answer.
Right, right. And I think we already talked about what we're going to take away from today. Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm going to get together with Vern and Elaine and see who's going to write that letter. Okay. So we used to say in Citizens Climate Lobby 10 years ago that a carbon fee was a silver bullet. We don't say it anymore ever since this came out. We talk about silver buckshot.
I like it.
That's what we saw tonight. Okay. And we can do it. I want to leave everybody on a positive note because this is a tough battle. Okay. Most of you probably know this. Solar and wind are getting cheaper. Corporations are coming on board. Countries and states are stepping up. Did everybody here know that the city of Miami passed a resolution acknowledging a climate crisis about a year ago?
Yes.
I do.
Okay.
I-
And Vernon has gotten a couple of resolutions for carbon fee in Broward County. So yeah, we're gonna follow through on that. Here's just a small sample of companies. This is an old report. There is probably 200 more companies on top of this that have made commitments to go 100% renewable.
That's hard to believe when I see Nestle because they're one of our big polluters.
Right.
We need to make them pay for all the plastic cleanup.
Yep. The polluters with the plastic, that's a whole other ballgame.
A whole nother ballgame.
It's big. So here's what I mentioned before, about 42 countries in the world have a carbon price already. Australia had one and now they don't, and they're working on bringing it up again. But countries you wouldn't expect, like South Africa, Argentina, Chile. The problem is the price isn't high enough. They're need to adjust it. And I think what Tom was talking about Glasgow this year, that's going to be the big issue. And one of the beautiful things about the legislation that's going through, at least in this country, and I know in Europe also, is they are addressing social inequalities along with climate change. Having all of our power companies and city dumps and waste disposal in low income neighborhoods. So that's a great step forward. And also on the ground, especially our youth. Somebody mentioned Greta, that's a powerful inspiration. This is what, as Citizens Climate Lobby, I love this post because this is a Republican representative from Utah, John Curtis, and he has come out in favor, not very loudly, of a carbon price, along with a couple of other Republicans in Congress right now. And so this is Andrew Jones demonstrating what you just talked about. If we could do this with, what's her first name, Cava?
Danielle
Cava.
Levine Cava.
This is exactly what we can do. And this is what we have been doing. We have been presenting this to Congress people. CCL works mostly on with the US Congress. And it has been presented to committees in Congress, in the United Nations, at a lot of different levels. So I want to thank everybody. And like I mentioned before, this is open access. Anybody can become what they call a climate ambassador, which is what myself and Elaine and Vern are, and share this with the rest of the world. That's what they want to do. That's what they did by making it open access. And as you mentioned, any other groups or people, schools, classes that you can think of to introduce us to, it would be greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you personally for having us with you tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeffrey, Bernal, and Elaine. Round of applause for our guest speakers. Thank you very much. Now, if you want to ask them a question, please raise your virtual hand. Also, Jeffrey, if you can make me the host again, I really appreciate it. And so, yeah, since it's almost 9 and we have a lot of people raising their hand, just please keep it to the point. So, Victoria, you go first.
Well, I have to say, I did send this invitation out to our commissioners for Oakland Park and Wilton Manors. And I'm looking at our participant list and not one of them came up. So I guess this is a good idea that I need to obviously call one of them or two of them that are really strong on the environment and speak to them directly and try to set up a Zoom meeting that they can all sit in and watch this, because I know they all need to know this information. So that's them. Now, as far as our county commissioners, I do have an in with our mayor, Steve Geller, who, believe it or not, is a big environmentalist. And as well as one commissioner, Barbara, we all know that Bim Burr, one of our commissioners, is a big environmentalist. And now Barbara Sharif, who's running for Congress, has jumped on board. But unfortunately, I'm not sure about Barbara. We interviewed the Sierra Club. I'm on the Sierra Club endorsement committee. We interviewed all the people that are running for the special election District 20. We're not endorsing any of them. And that is a sad thing to look at, that not one of them that we thought could go forward as a leader for us for the environment.
Wow. Victoria, 1 second. Victoria, is this going to be a public pronouncement, or the silence would be echoing your sentiments just now, where the Sierra Club says nothing?
Sierra Club will pretty much, you'll find out that Sierra Club will be announcing that they have no endorsement.
Okay.
Or
I
we're still kind of
appreciate that,
hanging in
Victoria.
there.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
still
that-
kind of,
Oh, just that, you know, informing people that you went through the process of interviewing them and that is your conclusion. You know, that's important to share with people.
and
Yeah.
we had 5 to 6 people on every interview. So to get all different takes. And our conclusion came down to none of them. And which was really sad because we thought that either Bobby DeBose or Mari Hardy would be, but no, they weren't. I mean, they answered the questions, but then when it came to the interview, we found out they're pretty clueless. Probably our strongest one that has come out, and she's never been known to be an environmentalist, has been Barbara Sharif. And when she came on as an interview for the Broward Democratic Club, she talked about the environment. That kind of shocked me because I wasn't expecting her to say anything, and she did bring that forward. One other candidate has the Green New Deal on as a platform. Their advertisement says nothing about the environment. So one by one, you know, yeah, it's really sad because LC Hastings was always in our court.
He was a giant.
Yes, he was. And you can even go on, Sierra Club has done a chart giving them grades, all the people of how they grade from A to F with the environment in their voting. So yeah, we're just, we're sad here. I don't know what more to say, but I think that's a great idea to try to put together a mandatory meeting for commissioners and mayors all over from Palm Beach to Miami-Dade, that somehow we can find one person to make it mandatory that they hear this presentation. So we need to find a leader of each of the groups. I love your dog.
Well, if
Thank you.
we start
We
with
wanna
one
save
person, like Levine Cava, and
Right.
she sees it, then she's, you know, once she
Yeah.
recommends it to her staff,
Mhm.
then it'll take off. But, you know, I have to say that Vern is kind of our expert as far as getting cities involved. He's gotten 2 resolutions single-handedly for cities to promote and ask Congress to pass a carbon fee and dividend. And I'm familiar with some of the Broward County commissioners because Broward County actually passed a resolution about 2 years ago asking Congress to pass a carbon fee and dividend. So there's a lot of ways to work it.
Yes, Jeff, I met Daniel Levine's chief of staff. He has been to 350 org meetings in Miami. That is somebody I could reach out to.
Yeah, and you get backup. I mean, you know, the Miami group has gone to the city commission before, several times that I know of. So they would be working with you hand in hand, and plus this group and whoever else you bring along.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the remaining questions, I just had one real quick question. What, out of our simulation, what were like the top 2 things that moved the needle in the right direction?
Well, I think there's really 3 things that make the biggest impact. So one is the carbon price that has a huge impact. One is carbon removal, technological carbon removal, and the other is reducing methane and those other gases. Those seem to be the 3 most powerful things you can do.
Brian, I saw a question from Mickey Royce, I think her name is. And she said that she suggested rightfully that maybe we as a group could bring the solutions to the decision makers, the leaders, you know, LCA and other groups go to these leaders, instead of asking them what to do, we tell them what to do. because we have seen the solutions here. I think that will help, the leaders that are overwhelmed with the amount of choices they have to make. If we come with a package and say, look, we believe these envelope of solutions could work, and have them pick some, but we would have done the legwork, the homework, and we could provide them with the political support to do it. I think that could be an approach that would help them.
I love that. I love that. Maida, did you have a question? No, you didn't. All right. Jamie.
Yeah, well, in the beginning of the presentation, if I'm not on mute, am I?
No.
No.
We can hear
In the
you.
beginning of the presentation, I think you asked us to take a minute and think about what COVID had presented to us, or what we saw about what the possibilities could be, or what would we learn. And I had written something, and it was from a labor point of view, and it was called The Other Side of COVID. It takes a minute. Can I read it for you?
I'd like to
Sure.
hear it. Yeah.
If that's okay with Brian.
I'm sorry. Is it okay with you, Brian? Because I just found it the other day I found it the other day by accident. I was looking for something else. So it's called The Other Side. They can't tell us we didn't see crystal clear blue skies and clean air to breathe. The wealthy quarantine on yachts while black and brown people work the docks. The newly dead line the streets in body bags like sides of beef, miles and miles of pristine sandy beach. They can't tell us we don't know the public health's been bought and sold, business as usual. We're unprepared. Those who could back their shares. This masquerade of reality, all of us a commodity. There's profit in death and misery. They can't tell us we didn't hear the sound of silence ringing in our ears. Even gunshots seemed to surrender to the pause. Dolphins played as birds took flight, 1 million stars in just one night. Dogs and wolves howling just because. They can't tell us we don't feel like now's the time for a Green New Deal. No more pipelines, bury the coal, put the mountaintops back, not one more hole. High-speed rail, clean energy, green new jobs with dignity, our planet before profit and greed. When we come out the other side, people better be ready to stand up and fight, because we're not going back to the way things used to be. When we come out the other side, a new pandemic of human rights, a global fight for people like you and me.
I love it, Jamie.
Only one more verse.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Can you put
All
that in the
right,
chat?
I'll leave it there.
Nice.
Thank you. All right, that's
I
it.
love that.
Yes.
Should
thank
distribute
you.
that everywhere.
Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
beautiful.
Mr. President Lorenzo, you have a question?
Well, I don't have so much of a question, but a short statement. Again, I thought that this was superb. And we saw the half an hour that Elaine once gave us, now extended to an hour and a half. And it was as superb as it was on the first time. The important thing I believe about this is that, and I'm basically kind of repeating in my head what I have understood that we need to do, is the question that this needs to be shared with other people in terms of being able to create the conditions for actual change. Tonight was a suggestion was given here on how to approach Danielle Levine Cava. And I'm focusing on her because I do believe the possibilities with Danielle Levine Cava are real, that she understands the situation, and that when she understands something, she is willing to walk the mile, to be able to go and make that. This presentation provides her ammunition to be able to try to convince other people, to try to get other people on board. When Maria Elvira Salazar tells you that she haven't heard of anybody, is because she only talks to people that deny the COVID, that deny climate change. She is limited in the amount of people that she relates to, but that's not the case with Danielle. And even in the sense that I consider her a progressive. She doesn't only talk to progressive people. She only, she's a real full-fledged mayor of the county, and she's a mayor for everybody here. And she talks to everybody, and she's able to pinpoint where are the Victoria was saying tonight, there is another meeting going on, which probably has had much more people than we did here, because it's a lot of other organizations involved in that meeting. But those people are prime people to be able to get the information that was provided here tonight, because that information is gold. Is really what it will make people be able to have an understanding of how to move forward. So to conclude, the idea of I think it was Tom to produce a letter to you guys, telling you what wonderful this thing tonight was, and then we can use that letter in order to be able to connect with Daniel Levin Cava and other mayors. And keep in mind, at least for me, I see Daniel Levin Cava being a possible governor of the state of Florida in the coming soon.
Next
Coming
month,
soon.
next year,
Maybe next year.
after the recall.
Maybe next year.
Thank
No,
you.
I think in a fair election, she will be the
Yes.
the Satan.
Thank you. Well, that is all the time we have for tonight. If you want to stick around after 9 p.m., you're welcome to. Just one request, Jeffrey, you're still the host, so if you can please make Gabriel the host of the meeting. You do that by going to participants and you click on his name. I just have one closing thought, which is one thing I took away from this presentation is that, all the things that we have to do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it's a really, really long list. And it's probably the hardest thing that humanity will ever have to do is to solve this problem, because we're literally asking to change how everything operates.
Everything, yes.
Literally everything. And plus, there's a deadline, and I just learned tonight
Yes.
that the deadline has been shortened, and it's
Yes.
we have to do it even quicker.
Yes.
So it is a very, very hard task, but luckily we have great people like everyone in this meeting who is committed. And I heard someone say that they're tired. Yeah, it's gonna. Unfortunately, some people who are part of the climate struggle are gonna pass away.
Yeah.
And there's going to have to be more and more generations after that will have to continue the fight, because this is not something that's just up to one person. This is going to be generations of people who will win this battle. So again, thank you to Vernal, Elaine, and Jeffrey for doing this. And thank you all for participating, and have a good night.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for having us.
Victoria. Thank you, Lorenzo.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Hope you are.
Gabriel.